Good morning. This one is a quickie, talking about the Doctors' Commons. So here we go. Doctors' Commons, also known as the College of Civilians, was a society of lawyers practicing civil law in London. Like the Inns of Court of the common lawyers, the society had buildings with rooms where its members lived and worked, and a large library. Court proceedings of the civil law courts were also held in Doctors' Commons. The civil law in England. That's the heading. While the English common law, unlike the legal systems of the European continent, developed mostly independently from Roman law, some specialized English courts applied the Roman-based civil law. This is true of the ecclesiastical courts, whose practice, even after the English Reformation, continued to be based on the canon law of the Roman Catholic Church, but also of the admiralty courts. The advocates practicing in these courts were trained in canon law before the Reformation, and Roman law after the Reformation, at the universities of Oxford and Cambridge. The civilian legal profession was split like its common law counterpart. The advocates had a role similar to that of barristers and the common law courts. The proctors, who were also associated with Doctors' Commons, can be compared to the common law solicitors. According to some accounts, the Society of Doctors' Commons was formed in 1511 by Richard Blodwell, Dean of the Arches. According to others, it existed already in the 15th century. The Society's buildings, which were acquired in 1567, were originally situated near St. Paul's Cathedral at Paternoster Row, and later nearby in Knight Rider Street, where it remained until the buildings were sold in 1865. In 1768, it was incorporated under the official name of College of Doctors of Law, exercent, in the ecclesiastical and admiralty courts. The college consisted of a president, the Dean of Arches for the time being, and those doctors of law who, having regularly taken that degree in either of the universities of Oxford or Cambridge, and having been admitted advocates in pursuance of the rescript of the Archbishop of Canterbury, were elected fellows in the manner prescribed by the Charter. There were also attached to the college 34 proctors, whose duties were analogous to those of solicitors. Now there's a section on disestablishment. In the 19th century, the institution of Doctors' Commons and its members were looked upon as old-fashioned and slightly ridiculous. A satirical description of the Doctors' Commons can be found in Charles Dickens' Sketches by Boz, and also in his novel David Copperfield, in which Dickens called it a cozy, dozy, old-fashioned, time-forgotten, sleepy-headed little family party. Chapter 23. As anticipation of the impending abolition grew, there was a reluctance among the society to admit new fellows, as this would dilute the proceeds of any windings up of the property. Dr. Thomas Hutchinson Tristram was the last to be admitted. The Court of Probate Act 1857 abolished the testamentary jurisdiction of the ecclesiastical courts and gave common lawyers the right to practice in areas which before had been the exclusive domain of civilians, while offering the token compensation that civilians could practice in the common law courts. Critically, the Act also made it lawful for the Doctors' Commons, by a vote of the majority of its fellows, to dissolve itself and surrender its royal charter. The proceeds of dissolution to be shared among the members. Following this, the Matrimonial Causes Act 1857 created a new divorce court in which both barristers and advocates could appear. Then, the High Court of Admiralty Act of 1859 liberalized rights of audience in the Admiralty Court, leaving only jurisdiction of the Court of Arches. A motion to dissolve the society was entered on the 13th of January 1858, and the last meeting took place on the 10th of July 1865. The Fellows did not formally surrender their offices, nor in the end their charter, but the society perished with the death of the last Fellow, Dr. T.H. Tristram, in 1912. The buildings of Doctors' Commons were sold in 1865 and demolished soon after. The site is now largely occupied by the Faraday Building. The Court of Arches itself finally admitted barristers, accepting that they could exercise all the offices of an advocate in 1867. I just like to read this one section again. The Probate Act 1857 abolished the testamentary jurisdiction of the ecclesiastical courts and gave common lawyers the right to practice in areas which before had been the exclusive domain of civilians, while offering the token compensation that the civilians could practice in the common law courts.